And all of a sudden, we got rumors popping up about Shedeur Sanders and Garrett Wilson and a trade. What is going on?
The NFL rumor mill just exploded with something absolutely wild involving Shedeur Sanders and the New York Jets. We're talking about a potential trade that could send shockwaves through two struggling franchises. The Browns and Jets are both having terrible seasons, but this move might actually make things worse for one of them. And honestly, the timing of all this couldn't be more suspicious. Would you trade Shedeur straight up for Garrett Wilson? Or does Cleveland need to throw in draft picks too?
This is a wild rumor. It really is. But it is floating around the idea of trading Shedeur Sanders for Garrett Wilson. I can tell you right now, the Jets ain't going to do that straight up. They're not going to do that straight up.
Let's start by looking at where these two teams actually are right now. The Cleveland Browns have one thing going for them, and it's their defense. We're talking about a legitimately elite championship-caliber defense. Jim Schwartz has that unit playing at an incredible level, and honestly, if you needed a defensive coordinator, he'd be at the top of the list. But that's pretty much where the good news ends for Cleveland. Then you've got the New York Jets, who might actually be on an even lower level of terrible than the Browns, which is saying something. Woody Johnson just benched Justin Fields, and let's be real about it. Fields has been awful, completely awful. Tyrod Taylor didn't look much better when he got his chance either. The Jets have legitimate talent on their roster with guys like Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson, but they can't seem to figure anything out.
But I have to say, like, He's a guy, it's not just an Ohio State thing. I've obviously paid more attention to him because of the Ohio State ties. He's 25 years old. Yeah, I trust a lot more that Garrett Wilson's going to be good in this league over the next 5 years, 3 years than Shedeur Sanders. So yeah, I'm throwing a pick. I'm throwing Shedeur Sanders.
You would throw Shedeur in there.
Yeah,
as of right now,
if that's what it took to get him.
Can't do it.
That's how much I believe in Garrett Wilson.
Can't do it.
And now, out of nowhere, we've got rumors flying around about a potential trade involving Shedeur Sanders and Garrett Wilson. Yeah, you heard that right. The Browns might be considering moving their backup quarterback to get a real #1 receiver. Here's the thing about Cleveland's receiver situation. Jerry Jeudy is not a true #1 receiver. He's just not. He's a decent #2, maybe even an excellent #3, but right now, he's pretending to be something he's not. He's out there acting like a top option when that's just not who he is as a player. Garrett Wilson, on the other hand, is a legitimate #1 receiver, the real deal. But let's talk about the actual logistics of this trade, because it's not as simple as swapping Shedeur for Garrett straight up. The Jets aren't doing that. No way. You don't trade an elite receiver for a backup quarterback without getting more in return. Cleveland would probably need to throw in a 3rd or 4th round pick at minimum. Maybe Shedeur and a 5th could get it done, depending on how badly the Jets want to move on from Wilson. The speculation around this has gotten serious enough that media members are actually discussing it on air. One host flat out said they wouldn't think twice about trading Shedeur if it meant getting Garrett Wilson. That's how good Wilson is, and that's how uncertain people are about what Shedeur actually is as an NFL quarterback.
It brought it up. Yes, I would trade Shedeur Sanders if it meant getting Garrett Wilson, because I think that's how good I think Garrett Wilson is and how just up in the air I am right now on Shedeur Sanders. What about?
No doubt about it. I wouldn't think twice about it. Now, if you wanted to keep Shedeur, a guy that I would look at is a guy I like. He's the #1 in Vegas, and he was the #1 with the Patriots. A guy that, in my opinion, is really just an excellent #2, but he can certainly play like a #1, is Jacoby Myers.
Now, if Cleveland wanted to keep Shedeur and still upgrade at receiver, there's another option out there. Jacoby Myers from the Raiders was the #1 guy in New England before moving to Vegas. He's really more of an excellent #2 who can play like a #1 when needed. His contract probably wouldn't be as expensive as Wilson's, and while he's older, he's got some good years left. Myers has been solid as a rock in Vegas, even though that team has been a disaster. But here's where things get really interesting and really messy. Mary Kay Cabot, who covers the Browns, pointed out that Cleveland isn't doing Shedeur wrong. They're bringing him along at the pace they think he needs. The organization is supposedly excited about what they're seeing from him in practice, so why would they trade him away before they even know what they have? Stefanski has been working with Shedeur behind the scenes, coming in early, putting in extra time together. They've been developing him this whole time, so they should have some idea of what kind of player he can be. But then Albert Breer, one of the biggest insiders in the entire NFL, dropped a bomb. He thinks there's a real possibility the Browns could deal Shedeur before the trade deadline. And that's when you remember the elephant in the room, Deshaun Watson. Watson is expected to be medically cleared after the bye week. Once he's cleared, the Browns have up to 3 weeks to activate him, or they could do it sooner. Suddenly, trading Shedeur doesn't seem as crazy because you'd have Watson back as the backup quarterback. Bailey Zappi could serve as the emergency number 2 until Watson is ready to go. Let's think about how absolutely insane this would be for Browns fans. You trade away Shedeur Sanders because Deshaun Watson is coming back. Shedeur goes somewhere else and becomes a legitimate starting quarterback. Maybe a top 15 or top 18 guy in the league. That would mean in the last 5 years, Cleveland gave up on 2 quarterbacks who became starters elsewhere. Baker Mayfield is currently an MVP candidate, potentially leading the race. And now Shedeur could be out there succeeding for a different team. All because of Deshaun Watson. The same Deshaun Watson who hasn't been able to recapture anything close to what he was in Houston. The guy they're paying a massive contract to. The guy who's already failed twice to prove he can still play at a high level. Josh Cribbs brought up an interesting point about the current quarterback situation. He thinks they should move away from Dillon Gabriel and work Shedeur in. Not because Dillon is doing terrible, but because he's not doing good enough. He's not progressing the offense down the field. That's a fair argument when you think about it. But here's the most Browns thing that could possibly happen. They trade Shedeur away, activate Watson, and then decide to give Watson those last 4 games of the season instead of Shedeur. They want one more look at Watson, one more chance to see if he can possibly get back to being a functional NFL quarterback. That's the 3rd time they'd be checking on him after he's already failed twice. The rumor was that Shedeur would get the final 4 games to show what he can do. But that playing time could easily go to Watson instead. The organization might want to triple check that Watson is completely done before they move on from him in that massive contract. Multiple insiders are now talking about the possibility of Cleveland trading Shedeur. This isn't just some random rumor from a nobody. Albert Breer getting involved makes it real. When the national insiders start reporting something, there's usually fire behind that smoke. The question becomes, who's actually inquiring about Shedeur? What teams are calling Cleveland and asking about their backup quarterback? And what's the price? Because if you're the Browns and you can get Garrett Wilson for Shedeur and a mid-round pick, that's a move that helps your team right now. Your defense is championship level. You add a true number 1 receiver to go with that defense, and suddenly you're a much more dangerous team. But you're also potentially giving up on a young quarterback who could be really good. And you're doing it because Deshaun Watson, who's shown absolutely nothing in Cleveland, is coming back from injury. The same Watson who's been a disaster since arriving. The same Watson whose contract is one of the worst in the entire league. This situation is a mess. The Browns are stuck between trying to compete now with their elite defense and figuring out their future at quarterback. The Jets are desperate for anything to work at the position. And Shedeur is stuck in the middle of all of it, working hard in practice while everyone debates whether he's a trade chip or the future. So that's the situation with Shedeur and this wild Garrett Wilson trade rumor. The next few weeks are going to be absolutely crazy, and you know I'm covering every single development. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Drop your thoughts down in the comments right now. Would you make this trade?